Special thanks to Valent Biosciences for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit about our mosquito program and talk to you about a unique problem that we experience here in Benton County, Washington. The title is Enough of These Anopheles, and I don't know that it really fits so much with the topic of the Summit for Solution for Floodwater Mosquitoes, because I'm actually going to talk about just the opposite of floodwater. I'm going to talk about low river levels in the Yakima River that runs through our district. If I was going to talk about the floodwater mosquitoes here, we would be talking about Aedes vexans or Increpidus, but Anopheles is a problem that we've been challenged with here in our district in the last probably 10, 15 years. Here's a map of our district, and you can see it's kind of a long, narrow strip of land that runs along the Yakima River. It's kind of the irrigated corridor in between the Horseheaven Hills to the south and then the Rattlesnake Mountain to the north. The Yakima River, you can see, runs about, it's somewhere near 45, 50 miles through our district. And so it creates significant problems for us. In the early season, usually some flooding, but in the late season, in recent years, we've had problems with stargrass, water stargrass growing in the river. Pete DeChant talked about the Columbia River in his presentation, and we do have significant problems, floodwater problems from the Columbia River. You can see it borders our district on the eastern boundary, but we're not going to talk about that today, so for another day. Anyway, so what is the problem that we are facing here? Water stargrass is growing in the Yakima River and creating habitat for Anopheles freeborni. The picture on the left is a photo from the drone. You can see the stargrass breaching the surface of the water. It's out in the middle of the river, actually. So the stargrass covers pretty much the entire bottom of the river, but where it breaches the surface is where it gives us some issues. And as we get late into the season, it breaches the surface in more and more areas. The photo on the right-hand side, you can see a pretty thick carpet of the stargrass that has actually breached the surface. You can't walk on it. It's not that thick, but I have actually seen, pop cans and soda cups and cardboard boxes and all kinds of trash on top of the stargrass. So it's fairly thick, and it creates these little eddies that are just perfect for production of Anopheles mosquitoes. So a little bit of the history about the Anopheles mosquitoes in Benton and Yakima counties. We actually cover a portion of Yakima and Benton counties. We're not county-wide, we're just a district within each one of those counties. So in the early spring and fall is usually when we have issues with Anopheles freeborni, and usually in pretty small numbers. We have overwintering adults that come out first, and then in the relatively cooler water temperatures of the early spring and late fall, we will find some Anopheles larvae in water. It's typical to find less than 10 Anopheles mosquitoes in a CO2 baited trap in one night. I would say even maybe less than 5. In years past, 20 some years ago, Anopheles were really pretty much insignificant here. We didn't find many. But the water stargrass used to be a real rare thing here, but now it's pretty much out of control and has made a dramatic change in our trap collections of Anopheles freeborni, and I'll talk a little bit about that in another slide. So the statement at the bottom here is from a local news, KNDO. It was on July the 22nd of 2010. It was a salmon biologist, Rachel Little, from the Benton Conservation District. She's still with the Conservation District to date. And her statement was that water stargrass is native to the Yakima River, but decades ago, it was considered rare. Now Little says, added nutrients and light have caused water stargrass to go out of control. She explains, as we've cleaned up the river and reduced soil erosion, more sunlight gets down through the riverbed and the plant has taken over. It's a population explosion. she's talking about a population of explosion for the water stargrass, but that also has led to a population explosion of Anopheles, free-benign mosquitoes. It's not uncommon in the last 2-3 years to find greater than 400 Anopheles free-benign in a CO2 baited trap in one night. They are very, very aggressive right at about sunset for about 30 or 45 minutes. So you can imagine if you're living right next to an area of the Yakima River and there's greater than 400 Anopheles mosquitoes we're finding in a trap, that you're not going to want to be sitting outside in the evening. They're pretty aggressive. Water stargrass also, I've noted that it grows in areas greater than 300 foot from the shoreline, and in many instances actually grows out in the middle of the river, as you saw in a previous slide. So what do we try to do about this? I know the title of this presentation is, Floodwater and the solutions for that. I can't really tell you we've got a great solution to date, but I can tell you some of the things that we have done. So our options would be to spray the larva and adult mosquito control. That's pretty visible when you're actually spraying in the river. When we're spraying early season with an aircraft for floodwater mosquitoes like Aedes vexans, we use an aircraft, but we're not actually spraying in the river or on the shoreline of the river. We're spraying areas where the water floods, and then when the river recedes, it leaves this water outside of the main river channel. So that seems to be pretty acceptable, but when we're spraying actually in the river, that's extremely visible. And we used to live in a community here that was pretty much an agricultural community, and that was not a big thing, wouldn't have been a big thing, but now it's changed to a lot more of an urban environment here. And we have a lot of pressure on, what we can do and when we can do it, how we accomplish mosquito control. And that's something that we just have to deal with, and has caused some changes in our program. So spraying in the river is really a difficult thing. Spraying the stargrass in the river, again, the same thing, a public concern. And there's really no funding available for spraying this, and it would be a pretty expensive project to be able to do that. Another solution would be mechanical harvesting. That requires cooperation of multiple agencies, and then you need to obtain the funding to be able to do that. That was definitely an option, though. A natural high water event, such as a flood, would be something that could disrupt the stargrass, and I'll talk a little bit about one of those. So spraying, what we have done is we did some aerial applications of Vectobac GS at 10 pounds per acre in some real small areas along the shoreline. We didn't really get the result we were looking for. I think the GS actually just fell out to the bottom of the river too soon, and we didn't get the product coming off the granule before it sank down. We tried also some applications from a kayak with just a 2-gallon hand can with a Vectobac 12AS at 16 fluid ounces per acre, and we had pretty good results with that. We got better than 80% control, but again, spraying 50 miles of the river with that is not really feasible. So we're looking at maybe some possible aerial applications along the shoreline, maybe utilizing a drone, maybe some wide area larvicide applications, incorporating some products like Vectobac WDG. The problem with that is it's not real accessible. It would have to be an aerial application because there's not really roadways that would take us all along the edge of the river. And then the statement at the bottom was from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, just basically saying that a large area of the river, a section of it about 30 miles, used to be a pretty important area for the Chinook salmon, where their spawning grounds, where in recent years, the number of fish spawning in those areas has dropped from like 70 to 80% down to about 18%. So the stargrass has had an impact on salmon. So physically removing the stargrass, Angela Beeler, our manager here at the mosquito program, has worked with a lot of different agencies and landowners trying to get funding to buy a harvester for actually cleaning up some of the stargrass out of the river in some key areas. There's a lot of different types of harvesters that are available. The end result of all of her work in the last year with this has been the allocation of $250,000 in a matching grant from the state of Washington, and with the potential for maybe having more in the future. I'm not going to go through each of these. This was Angela's kind of timeline. She spent a significant amount of time working on this. And again, the final result was getting funding from the Washington State's capital projects budget in the amount of $250,000. She tried other areas. There were other places where money may be available, but this just turned out to be the easiest one to get the funding actually approved. So the water event, I talked about a high water event. In August of 2019, we had late in the season high water, and it damaged a lot of the stargrass and really eliminated that Anopheles problem for a significant amount of time, several weeks. But that's not really something that we can predict is going to happen all the time. You can see the National Weather Service graph on the right-hand side. This was back from May of 2018, I believe, similar graph like what Peter showed in his presentation. But you can see most of the flooding and the high water events occur, in April and May, not really in June, July, and August, when the stargrass is a significant problem for us. And we can't really count on when they're going to flood or when the river levels are going to rise, and mosquito control in the grand scheme of things is not really an important factor for them in determining the river levels and how they adjust the water coming from the dams. So in summary, spraying the stargrass is not really a feasible thing for us. Spraying in the river on a limited basis might be a part of the solution. Applications maybe by drone or boat, or possibly by kayak in some very limited areas might be part of the solution if we just were to spray some areas of the shoreline. Mechanical harvesting may be a part of the solution once we get that harvester for our 2021 season. That may help us to eliminate in some key areas the stargrass. And then high water events are very helpful for us and perhaps can be planned, but I'm not real optimistic about getting the powers that be to allow us, or at least work with us on the river levels. We don't have all the answers yet, but it's clear that this problem is here to stay. It's been here for, a couple of decades now. And, none of these solutions will likely work as a sole method of control. I think it's going to be a combination of many of these things together that allow us to kind of reduce those Anopheles populations.
We are getting close. We are having a little bit less than a minute.
Okay, I think this is actually my last slide. So I just want to say that 2019 was a bad year for us. 2020, we really didn't have a huge issue with it. The stargrass started in the river about 2 weeks later than it did in previous years, and we had issues with the stargrass, but it wasn't anywhere near as our 2019 season. So with that, if you have questions, just put it on the questions and answers. I'd be happy to address that in the panel discussion.